Chapter 7 Violent Ensemble. Hella's stomach dropped to the soles of her feet, dozens, no, hundreds of feet above the ground in a single leap. If Skature wasn't holding her arms over his shoulders, she would have slipped off and plummeted to her death on the glowing blue aspirite below. The aspirite below, Hella thought. Looking down from the unbelievable height, she could see all the aspirite floors of the cull below illuminated against the ever-darkening surrounding structures. For the first time in her memory, that blue glow looked beautiful. As Hella and Skature hovered at the peak of their ascent, she gained a new perspective of the world she'd been trapped in her whole life. The fresh air and the wind on her face added new life to the breathtaking view of Ypole at twilight. The city rings, all of the causeways that dissected them, the blue of the cull floors, multiple culls, juxtaposed against the dark Rayan suburb cityscape they bordered. As her stomach returned to its rightful place, and as quickly as her thoughts of the vision below manifested, Hella and Skature began to descend. And fast. Her stomach was now going in the opposite direction, up into her throat. Where are we going to land? How are we going to land? Those questions were the only things occupying Hella's mind now, but there was no point in her thinking them. She was going down as surely as they'd gone up, towards the point that Skature had predetermined before they launched into the air. Just close your eyes, hold on tight, and trust Skature, she whispered to herself, eyes clamped shut as they fell for what seemed like an eternity. She felt the impact of the landing, but it wasn't nearly as bad as she thought it would be. Somehow, Skature ate up most of the impact without breaking his legs or the ground beneath them. "How was that for you back there?" he asked, twisting his head over his shoulder to address his little Thutan backpack. "It was... wow, totally... wow," Hella replied, fumbling for words. "Oh, yeah, it never gets old either. Here's the thing now, Miss Hella. We've just leapt the cull walls into the outermost ring of Ypole, the 500 grids. This is the poorest part of the capital, which is good for us for a couple reasons. First, fewer lighting orbs on the streets. Makes it easier for us to move with stealth. Second, fewer peacemen. You'd think they'd want more of them in the poorer areas, but those self-absorbed rats save most of their muscle for the richest areas." "How many more leaps till we get to the meeting area, Skature?" Hella asked. "Well, now that's the other thing. You may not have noticed being on my back and all, but using that amount of flame I do to make those kind of moves, I light up bright as a star, a very red star. Being high up in the air, and especially as the sky goes proper black, everyone in Ypole would see us like a red streaking arrow splitting the sky," he said, making an arching motion with his hand. "So I'm afraid we'll be on foot until we get to where we're going. The good news is, as I'm sure you're aware from all your blessing duties, the Rayan-occupied areas don't have aspirite on their streets. All that tech is purpose-built for Thutans, and there aren't supposed to be any Thutans out here they don't know about. In short, we need to hoof it for a while. All we gotta look out for is stray Rayans." Skature?" Hella said. "We could hop up on the top of the causeways. No one will be up there, and we can still walk once we're up." "Oh, that's a fine idea, Hella. I wish that I could say you were the first one to have had it. We've scouted the causeways for exactly that purpose. In fact, the tops of every dividing wall and causeway roof are the same. They're tiled with a certain kind of aspirite technology that reacts when someone steps on it. It'll stick you tight and alert every Rayan guard on duty to the security breach." Hella hung her head as her bright idea was quashed. "Now, we've never tried breaking those ties like you did with your floor in the cull before, so who knows? Maybe that'll be a possibility in the future. Right now, we got another trick for them, but we'll discuss those ideas with the rest of the action group when we meet up. They're smart cookies. For now, let's just keep to the shadows of the back alleys. They'll get us there, though we could use just a hint of flame to speed the process up." Skature placed his hand on Hella's shoulder, and her eyes lit ever a dim red. "Okay there. Think you can keep up?" he said with a widening grin. "Try me." At her response, Skature sprung sideways down an alley to his left. Hella, realizing the game had just started, shot after him. The back alleys of the 500 ring were a labyrinth of tight twists and turns between crowded, slender, two-story buildings. At a sprinting pace, with the amount of flame they were using, it only took one or two nimble springs to span the length of a building before a 90-degree turn to the right or the left. Hella could just see Skature at the end of each length before the next turn. Then he vanished out of sight again. It was a high-speed game of cat and mouse, and she loved it. In the blur of passing buildings, she saw a young Rayan girl, maybe 2 years old, on a balcony, who cheered for her as she blasted past on ground level. Hella waved at her in the brief moment it took to pass. She felt like a hero, or some legendary creature built for speed and agility. Suddenly, while she was reveling in that sensation, she realized Skatter was nowhere in sight. Oh, how many turns have I made since I saw that toddler? Since Skatter disappeared? She couldn't remember. Maybe 2? Her breathing quickened. He wouldn't leave me behind, would he? Of course not. Was he watching for me behind him? He'll realize I'm not behind him shortly. Maybe I should stay right here. She began to weigh her options, trying not to succumb to the chilling feeling of being alone in a foreign area that was off limits to her kind. I should stay still. No, wait. I should go out to the main street. I'll be easier to find there than in one of a dozen random alleys, she concluded. So, Hella followed the dim glow of the street orbs that were beckoning her towards the main street of whatever 500 grid she was on. Springing at the same pace as before, she burst out onto the main street from the alley entrance, not noticing the 2 men that were walking past at that moment. Oof! Hella exclaimed, crashing into one of them. Whoa, what in soul? Hella scuttled backwards, taking shaky breaths. Then, visceral terror shot down her spine when she realized they were both peacemen. What are you doing out here so... the peaceman began. Thootin! It's a Thootin! The other one hollered, pointing at Hella's telltale clothing. What? The first peaceman squinted at her. In the backlight from the street orbs, she saw realization dawning in his eyes. Then, the second peaceman began fumbling for his aspirate saber. That movement spooked Hella into action, like a loud noise around a startled rabbit. She shot back down the same alley until she smashed into the wall at the end. Half stunned by the impact, she shook herself before taking a left turn, then a right, then a left again. At the third turn, she collided with someone else, but this time it was a startled, grinning Skatter. Oh, there she is! Skatter, she yelled, beginning to cry. I lost you, and you disappeared, and I couldn't find you, and I thought I should go to the main street, and when I got there, I didn't see them. They just appeared, and... Whoa, slow down. Take a breath. You're fine, little miss. No, she snapped. No, there are 2 peacemen. I ran into them and they saw me and they know I'm a Thootin, and they're right behind now. We have to go. Peacemen? They saw you? Skatter dropped the smile. Well, that's unfortunate. What are the chances, hey? No big deal. Let's just lose them. He was way too casual about the situation for Hella's liking. She didn't have to convince him into action, though. He pulled her up onto his back once again. This time, let's finish the race together. He took one massive leap forward as the sound of yelling and running footsteps grew louder behind them. Hella kept her eyes closed and just trusted in Skatter for the remainder of the journey. She'd been around peacemen her whole life, and though she was never comfortable, she had never experienced such fear. She hated that she was so scared. In her mind, she thought she would be braver if she encountered an enemy face to face. But that was it, wasn't it? It was the first time Hella had to defend herself physically, and she chose to run away instead. Not that it was the wrong choice, but the embarrassment burned her cheeks red. I'm a child of Grom, a wielder of the fearsome unvanquished flame. I shouldn't be the one running. They should, she berated herself. Suddenly Skatter broke through her train of thought. Miss Hella, we're almost at the meeting point. Now, I'm very happy to have you along on this little adventure, but the others may not feel the same. The fact is, they don't even know you're coming or anything about you, so I would suggest just letting me do the talking. Hella nodded, even though she knew Skatter couldn't see her while she was on his back. Yeah, just like that. You already figured it out. 6 more sharp turns and Skatter stopped dead. Is this it? Hella whispered in his ear. Well, basically, yes. We just passed the borderline between South Nye and East Nye. You and I just crossed a quarter of the circumference of a pole, my dear. Wow. You see the wall to our right? Skatter pointed without releasing Hella's arm. Those doors in it lead to Cull 51. That's where we're meeting. Due to some unseemly circumstances, there are no more Thootins living there. That makes it ideal for our little gathering. The floors haven't turned on in there for days. It's a ghost town. So, my dear, hold on tight. One more leap over that wall there and you'll get to meet the rest of the group. Hella nodded once more and squeezed herself closer to Skatter. He crouched down at that approval, now glowing a radiant red in the dark of the alley. then blasted off with the same vigor as before. This time, Hella didn't close her eyes. She drank in every moment of the rise and the inevitable plummet to the ground, paying closer attention to how Skatter landed. She wanted to know how he didn't shatter every bone in his body from such a height. Just before impact, she saw a flash of something, an unmistakable, though dim, red puff of air? Energy? Something. Some sort of red gust seemed to cushion his landing at the perfect moment. "Typical," a voice announced from the shadows to the left. "Calls an emergency meeting, then shows up last to it." "What could be more predictable, Falk?" came another voice. The eyes belonging to the two voices glowed red as their owners stepped forward. "Falk? Carter? As punctual as you are grumpy," Skatter responded. "And you call me predictable. Ho! The one to the left was almost Skatter's height, but much stouter. The other was exactly the opposite, short and skinny. Both had black hair, which helped them blend into the shadows, along with short, scruffy-looking beards. "How are you enjoying your new accommodations?" the smaller one asked. "Delightful, Carter. You can thank your man for me." "Who's the pup, Skatter?" A third voice sounded as one more set of eyes began to glow red further across the common. "Gentlemen, I thank you to oblige me an unexpected guest. She's a new acquaintance, but a valuable addition to the cause, I assure you." Skatter directed Hella in front of him. "May I introduce little Miss Hella of Call 19. She is one of the Theutons of interest here, and despite her tender age and diminutive stature, may be one of Grom's greatest weapons in the near future," he said with pride. The stocky man Skatter called Falk spoke up. "I don't like surprises, but I like children even less." "I'm with Falk on that," Carter, the smaller Theuton, chimed in. "Kids have a bad habit of running at the mouth. Why would you bring a little girl to this? I've got sensitive intel to share tonight." "Hold up now," Skatter retorted. "Miss Hella has already added to the value of this group, and you just haven't realized it yet. She's the reason I called this meeting tonight. Trust me when I tell you I trust her implicitly." The third man crossing the common protested. "We can all see why you're interested in her, Skatter. Her value is evident from across the cull. Do you plan on sacrificing this one to the cause too?" Skatter turned to face the man who was getting close enough for Hella to make out his features. He stood a solid head above Skatter, had long, thick black hair and a grotesque scar across his left cheek where his beard didn't grow, like it had been nearly ripped off his face at some point. "Torin," Skatter's eyes began to glow more intensely, along with his torso. "We all have a role to play in Grom's mighty will. I don't choose what she does with her servants, and your implication I would slaps me with the flavor of contempt." The two Theutons were now within arm's reach of each other. Both stood their ground, folding their arms and glaring. "Enough! We're wasting time with this chest beating," Carter barked, clearly trying to break the rising tension. "The kid is here, so be it. She's with Skatter, which makes her his problem if she speaks secrets in the cull. Let's just present our intel and return to our cover while the night allows us." Skatter and Torin didn't break their gaze as Carter spoke. Several more uncomfortable moments passed, then Torin glanced at Hella. "Fine. We'll suffer the child. I don't care." Placing his hand on Hella's shoulder, Skatter's face morphed into a familiar grin. "Fantastic! Falk, you've said the least so far, so in my mind, that earns you the right to first disclosure. What have you discovered in Call 38 since our last encounter?" The four men lowered themselves to the ground in a circle, legs crossed. Hella hadn't seen this custom before, but bashfully imitated them a couple moments later. Falk began. 38 is full of cowards, like most calls, but they listen to what the Rayans say around them while they toil. The most interesting thing I've heard so far are rumors of an important ceremony after the new moon. The Order of Peace are performing it. Sounds significant. An anointing of something or someone. Everyone who matters in the Inner Three will be there. Hella was soaking up everything she heard. The Order of Peace, ceremony, the new moon, the Inner Three. Does that mean the three innermost rings of Epole? She wondered. "Beyond that," Falk continued, "nothing else noteworthy. The only flame worth mentioning is held by a feckless idiot. Probably doesn't even know he's wielded. In fact, I'm sure of it. City doesn't even think the flame is real. Pfft, just a story," Falk spat. "It's pathetic how low they've broken these Theutons." "A ceremony, hey?" Skatter said. "Might be something worth crashing, depending who attends. Good info, Falk." He then looked to the smaller Theuton beside him. "Carter, what have you found out?" Carter leaned forward. "I've got some actionable logistics we'll benefit from. For starters, I've acquired a reasonable estimate of our population here as opposed to theirs." The other three men now leaned in, mirroring Carter. The entire city of Apol is encircled by 4 prefectures of the condemned, the north, east, south, and west. Each of them houses 50 culls of 5 Theutons maximum. That equates to 1,000 culled Theutons. Okay, well, the number fluctuates. Births, deaths, anomalies like this cull, but I estimate between 800 and 1,000 children of Grom live in the outer ring of this city. The action group members raised their eyebrows and looked at each other. Carter continued. As for the Rayans, their raw numbers may seem overwhelming in an arithmetic sense, but there is much more nuance to their utility and distribution. For example, in typical Rayan fashion, they've architected a hierarchy into the rings of the city that start from the most important members down to the least. Beginning in the middle, what they call central arbitration, and then out through the next 2 circles which make up their inner round. Then, the last 2 circles are more commoners and low-worth Rayans. But there's a major flaw in that construct. Such as? Skatter asked. Each concentric circle that expands from central arbitration out is larger in landmass, so their populations increase with each expansion of what are lower-worth rings. Carter paused for effect. Hella's eyes glazed over. Huh? Torin verbalized what she was thinking. What in holy Grom's name does any of that mean? Carter huffed. It means most of the Rayans in this blasted city are worthless in combat. At that, they all let out a knowing, oh. The highest population rings are the lowest quality Rayans when it comes to their ability to use Aspirite. I've estimated the population of all 5 rings to be roughly 750,000, no more than 800,000. 80% of them, though, can barely use Aspirite, just minor daily activities like opening doors or moving powered carts. The most dangerous Rayans exist almost exclusively in the inner 3, and they only account for about 20% of the total population, or 160,000 max. The men seemed pleased at that assessment, but 160,000 battle-worthy Rayans sounded like an unfathomable number to Hella. Even if there were 1,000 ready and willing Theutons in the culls, which there certainly weren't, that would still make it 160 to 1 in the Rayans' favor. The idea of a Theuton warrior taking on 10 Rayans by themselves didn't sound as impressive when there were another 150 waiting behind them. Well, that's positive news, Carter. Excellent work, Skatter exclaimed. And Torin, what do you have to report, my hulking friend? Torin scoffed at Skatter's sarcastic compliment. I'm still working with the Theuton of interest in Cull 44. He's got the drive and potential to be a capable warrior, given time and dedication. I've built a genuine relationship with him. He looked at Skatter as he said it. Not that I figured I'd bring him to some top-secret meeting, but he deserves to fight for Grom. Of course he does, Skatter said in a rush, and so he shall. May we all! He clapped his hands together and took a deep breath. All right, gents, you've probably already figured out why I've called this meeting. I'm assuming you all smashed the Aspirite floors like I showed you with the eye. Our guest here provided that helpful insight. Skatter motioned towards Hella. Now, how we utilize this new revelation is my primary question. I want to hear your take on it. Carter, I'm sure you've already got a few thoughts bouncing around that puzzle-solving brain of yours. Carter nodded. I do. This is a very interesting weakness in the superstructure of Apol. Allow me to demonstrate. He turned around, charged his flame up in a sudden burst, and smashed the floor behind him with a lighting orb he had taken from his pocket. Picking up a palm-sized chunk, he placed it in the center of the group. Look at the edges of this fragment and you'll see trillium strands coming from each Aspirite gem. There's a connecting web that unites the floor and all its gems. We figured that out too, Hella blurted. Me and my brother, well, and Skatter. A hint of a smile played at the edges of Carter's mouth. Right then, well, here's what this knowledge tells me. Maybe you've thought of this too. Only particular parts of Apol use Aspirite floors, namely those portions necessary to control Theutons. The culls, their network of causeways, and various defensive structures, for example. We know Aspirite needs Rayan will to activate, and there appears to be an unbroken system of connected floors leading from central arbitration all the way to the outer culls. So there must be pressure points in that system in several locations. If we break the connection between the initial transmitter along the relay network, anything further down the system from that breakage should become inoperable. More blank stares. Carter sighed. We can cut the Aspirite chain between the Rayan running it and portions of the city if we know where the connections are. Ah, got it, Skatter laughed. Just imagine the look on their faces when they try to turn the floors on under our feet and we just keep walking forward. Hella grinned at that thought, as did the rest of the men. We're really getting somewhere with this venture, my friends, Skatter continued. Unless there are any other updates or ideas, I propose we adjourn for the night. Carter, you and I will work to determine as many choke points as we can in that Aspirite network. Torin, keep working your man. Turn him into the asset for Grom you know he is. And Falk, ask around and find out more about this upcoming ceremony. There's a chance we could make what Carter and I figure out actionable by that time." He clasped his hands together and beamed. "Think of the glorious disruption we could cause for those sons of dogs." At that statement, each Thooten in the circle grabbed the shoulder beside them and they all intoned, "Grom's love." They stood up. Skatter pulled Hella onto his back, and then, one at a time, they each charged their flame up and leapt the front wall of Cull 51, disappearing into the maze of the Outer Ring's alleyways. Skatter landed as softly as a feline on the streets of the Outer Ring. He placed Hella down beside him, then asked, "Well, what do you think of our little undercover buster squad?" "Carter seems nice," Hella said. "Falk didn't seem to like me much, and Torin, he scares me." "That's a pretty good rundown, my dear," Skatter agreed. "Carter's the big brains of most of our moves. Falk takes some getting used to, but he's a skillful user of the unvanquished flame. Uses it like an artist, truly remarkable. Then, well, then there's Torin. He's the kind of person you want on your side, not because you want him there, but because you know how much the enemy won't want him there." Hella chuckled at that remark. "Not that you gotta concern yourself with him. He knows who runs the show despite his bravado." Hella recalled the stare down between the two, remembering it was Torin who looked away. "Now, Miss Hella, what say you and I have another game of chase to pass the time on the way back to Cull 19? Hella went cold at the suggestion. "No! Are you serious?" She shot back at him. "I lost you. I went too fast, and I almost got captured by peacemen. They could have killed me, Skatter." Hella had been unconsciously backing up as she protested the suggestion. "Oh, little Hella," Skatter said calmly. "I never lost you. I knew where you were the whole time. There's no way I could lose you, even if we were blindfolded and sent down a river. I can feel your flame easily. I'm trying to teach you to do the same. That's why I got a couple of turns ahead of you, to get you to feel where I went instead of seeing it. And guess what? You did. Unwittingly. You followed me for a couple turns by instinct before you froze." "Really? Look, I could have told you to feel which way I went before getting ahead of you, but then you would have thought about it. The flame works from the heart. You feel it. You don't understand it before you ever know it. Trust me, you can do it, 'cause you already have." Hella wrung her hands. "What if I lose you again? I'm scared." "I will never be more than 2 turns away from you. You have my word. It'll be easy, come on. And if I feel you stop for a spell, well, I will too. I'll even turn back if you give up. Come on now, where's your Thooten courage? Let's have some fun with it," he encouraged. Hella took a deep breath, let it out, then looked at her mentor. "Okay, let's try this again." "Ha! There's my girl. Now, let's get your flame set," he said, grabbing her by the shoulder. Hella's eyes once more began to glow a dim red. "And I'm off." Skatter sprung to the end of the alley in one leap, twisted on his heels with a flash of a grin, then disappeared. "Come on, Hella. Trust yourself. Just follow him," she thought. Then she bounded off herself. She saw the direction he went, but after that she was blind. Skatter said it was a feeling, so feel where he is, she urged herself. Left, right, straight, left, left. There! I see him! She giggled with relief. 3 more turns and he was gone again. She wasn't as worried this time, though. She was following her intuition. In fact, she could almost feel the correct turn. With each turn, it was less of a probability and more of a certainty. The next move was across that street, into the alley to the left a bit. She knew it. So she bolted out of the shadows and into the light of the street orbs to cross the road. But they were brighter than she was expecting. As Hella shielded her eyes, she missed her footing and tumbled over at full speed, crashing into a rubbish can and off the wall behind it. "Oh!" she groaned, pushing herself up to her hands and knees. She couldn't tell which direction she was pointing now. Her ears were ringing and her head was wet. "Blood? Am I bleeding?" she wondered, dazed as she felt warm liquid on her hairline. While she squinted at her hand, looking for blood, she heard someone's voice. It was getting closer. "Skatter?" she slurred, still dazed. "It's her, Gadai! I found her! Over here!" the voice yelled. What? Who is that?" Hella wondered, grimacing. But before she could puzzle out what was happening, her whole body went rigid and rose off the ground. She connected everything at once. "Oh no! 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 Stop! It's the peacemen!" Just as she came to that conclusion, the rigidity of her body doubled. No, tripled. What? She couldn't even say the word aloud because her tightly clenched jaw prevented her from speaking. Her eyes remained open, though. In fact, she couldn't blink them at all. The double vision began to fade as she focused in on what appeared to be 7, 10 Rayan peacemen inching forward, sabers outstretched and pointed at her. "Hold her! She's the one! The same one I told you about! She ran straight into me earlier tonight!" Hella recognized the voice of the man she had collided with a short time ago. He was at the head of the Rayan group advancing on her, their Asperite sabers holding her like invisible chains pulled tight. "You aren't going anywhere this time, Thutin," he crowed. Hella's eyes began to burn from not blinking. As her vision blurred, everything around her moved in slow motion. The steps of the peacemen, the pulsing blue glow of their sabers, the red streak that just tore through the rear two peacemen. Huh? Hella blinked. The restraint on her body lessened by half. 3 more peacemen exploded in a splatter of blood and bones across the ground. There! She saw him. "Scatter!" she screamed. She could scream now. The binds that had held her aloft felt more like ropes now. She could pull against them. "Halt, Thutin dog!" 4 of the remaining 5 turned to face Skatter, training the brunt of their Asperite force on him. Hella fell to the ground, but this time the stocky peaceman physically lifted her, turning her around and held her like a shield with his blade against her throat. She stood still, now paralyzed by fear instead of Asperite. The 4 Rayans held formation on Skatter, their blades pulsing. The light of the street orbs was suddenly drowned out by red light instead of white. It was coming from Skatter. His body began glowing with violent intensity. "Hold formation, Rayans of the Peace!" came the call from the front of the other 4 Rayans. Skatter looked right at that Rayan and stepped forward. 1 step, 2 steps, 3, faster. He walked towards the Rayan, calling the orders in defiance of their Asperite powers. The formation began to falter. He was getting too close, and they clearly had no backup plan. When Skatter got within arm's reach of the leader, the peaceman broke rank and swung his saber. "Die, you monster!" Hella watched as Skatter sidestepped the arc of the blade in an effortless and perfectly timed motion. He then grabbed the arm holding the blade, looked the man in the eyes, and responded, "You first." In one violent movement, he twisted it backwards, plunging the weapon right through the terrified face of his foe. The other 3 panicked at that sight. One screamed, the other turned to run. The third lunged at Skatter, flailing his saber. Skatter caught the wrist of the incoming attack while simultaneously punching a hole clean through the torso of its owner. In one blazing movement, he spun backwards with a rising kick that took off half of the screaming man's head. The spinning motion ripped the arm off the gored Rayan. Skatter flung the now disembodied arm, blade in hand, at the fleeing peaceman. It plunged cleanly through his back with a wet thud. Before, Hella was frozen in fear from the Rayans. Now she was frozen out of shock from what just happened to them. The final Rayan peaceman began trembling, still holding his blade to Hella's throat as he stumbled backwards towards the wall behind him. Please, he stuttered. Skatter's glow began to amplify, his whole body turning a brilliant red. The only detail that clearly stood out in contrast was his sinister, impossibly wide smile. "I have a family! I have a wife and a little kid!" His plea ended in a sickening crunch when Skatter lunged at him, hand outstretched, crushing his head into the wall behind. The blade at Hella's throat clanged to the ground next to her feet. She stood half in terror and half in relief while a single tear rolled down her cheek. Skatter's glow abated as he looked down at her. He wiped her tear away with the thumb of his free hand. "Don't cry for them, my dear. They are as insects. We are the mighty, unwavering hand of Holy Grom." He released the dangling body from the decapitated peacemen behind her. "The next time they come at you, I want you to remember that." Hella looked at her savior, juxtaposed against the carnage all around him, and hugged him tight. "Okay, little one," Skatter soothed, returning the gesture. "Now let's have you hop on my back again. Training is over for now. We gotta beat the sun back to cull 19. He pulled her onto his back, made a quick turn, and headed south through the night air, now thick with the coppery scent of blood, back towards their cull. Notes from the Acolyte. The Rayan military hierarchy for soldiers starts at the level of peaceman. Above them are shock troopers. The next level above them is the highest and most prestigious designation of EST, or Elite Shock Trooper. The ESTs are the strongest and most coveted units of the Rayan military. Yet, even elite shock troopers are subordinate to any member of the Order of Peace, which, itself, contains certain stations of force.